Hey guys, in this video, let's go ahead and take our character that we modeled in our previous video and also brought into Maya from Substance Painter. So in the previous video, I gave you the project file. So you have the character and you have the textures, and we set them up in Maya. So you should, if you watch part 3, you should be able to see, you should have exactly the same scene as what I'm seeing here. Now, the only thing that I would like to do before we hop into rigging is I would like to brighten him up just a little bit, just for this presentation. So I'm going to go to Material Attribute here, and then I'm going to go to, let's go click on this button here. And now if we click on the, right now I'm in the height. I don't want the height. I would like to go to the color. So I'm going to go to color, then I'm going to go to input 1. And in here under color balance, we have something called exposure. And what I would like to do is, right now he's a little bit too dark for me. So I'm just going to pump up the brightness just a little bit so we can see him a little better, especially as we're setting up the joints. I'm not really sure how that's going to affect the render, but I'm only concerned about the viewport here in our work area, not really rendering so much. All right, so what is the very first step in setting up the HumanIK? Well, what I like to do is I'm going to go to my channel box and create a new layer, and I'm going to add this guy to my layer. So he's going to be on here. And this is going to allow me to set him up as a template or as a reference and kind of control the mesh a little better as we begin to setting up the joints. And the only other thing that I would like to point out is, well, I think we're going to actually deal with this as we begin to setting up the joints. But one of my comments is the arms are kind of down and the legs are kind of spread out. And for the HumanIK to work well with motion capture files or just setting him up for animation, you do want to have this character in as much of a T-pose as possible. So let's deal with this as we begin rigging. And the only other comment that I have before we begin is, at this point you can see the topology of this character, and the faces are pretty good. It's 16,000 faces, and we are at 33,000 tries. So it's not, you know, too low or too high. It's a pretty decent for a modern game engine character. But if you guys wanted to, you could optimize him just a little more, and that's actually a pretty good practice to do it after you do the texturing, because in Substance Painter, when we created the textures, it's nice that we had all this kind of a mid to high detail to create nice textures. But now, since we do have the textures and they're already done, there's really no reason why we couldn't make him a little more efficient. So for example, if I double click on the pants here, and one thing I could do is I can turn off the texture just for a minute, and I can also activate this button here, use default material, and also I can turn off the lights just so we can see maybe a little better. And now what I could do is I can double click on the body, and maybe let's go into isolate mode and take a look. We do have all these extra loops that we could do, actually get rid of, and see maybe that would be that might look a little nicer and a little cleaner. So maybe we don't need all of these edges here. Holding down the shift key, I'm just selecting all of these edges, and I want to be careful. I don't want to delete any of them on the knee. Another thing that I need to point out is my object X under symmetry is on, so it's doing both sides. All right, so I'm gonna leave the knee alone, and I can come up here and maybe holding down the shift key, grab some of these edges here. And we can always delete them, and then if we don't like how that looks, we can put it back. But I just wanted to show you that it's actually, I'm going to leave this one because now we're getting into bending. All right, so check this out. We are at 33,000 tries, right? But if I hold down the Control key and press the Delete key, we just lost 3,000 tries. So we went from 33,000 to 30,000. I'm rounding this up, but about 31,000. But we did lose like 2,500 to almost 3,000 tries. And if we zoom out and look at our shape, it's still holding really beautifully. And again, it's not going to affect the textures whatsoever. So this is pretty good practice to take the time and optimize your mesh before you actually rig it for animation, especially if it's a game character, right? So, you know, you can even get rid of some of these if you wanted to. So make them a little less dense. But for the sake of for this exercise, I think it's really good. I'm happy with this number. Let's go ahead and take a look at what else we got here. So the boots, as you remember, we did them in zBrush, and this is just a Z remesher. So the boots are fine. They look low poly enough for me at least. And the belt, let's go ahead and double click on the belt and isolate it. And now when we get into game animations and game characters, one thing that you do want to avoid is you don't want to have topology inside topology, because that will never be seen, right? So essentially we just have this, all these polygons are wasting space, right? They could be creating extra draw calls in the game engine, so we don't want these. Let's get rid of them. And I'm just holding down the Shift key and clicking on the polygon next to it to select the entire loop. And now I'm going to press delete. All right. And if we wanted to, we can of course get rid of some of these, but I'm not 100% sure that I should, because this is in the waist area, and if he is going to start bending, you know, or bending down or squatting or anything like that, I want to avoid having too low of a topology. But if I do hold down the Control key and press delete, I can see what that looks like, and it does look like it would probably work. But just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to put it back. I'm going to say undo and click on this button to bring it back. And one thing I should repeat is, if you select an edge, the reason you want to hold on the Control key is because you when you do the control, you get rid of the edge and the verts. So if you don't hold on the Control key, it will delete the edge, but it will leave the verts. It will leave the points. So that's not good practice. All right, so at this point, I think we are ready for rigging. Okay, so let's put back our textures. I'm gonna get out of the default material mode. I'm gonna turn my lights back on. And I guess I don't need the wireframe on. All right, I'm gonna do Control S to save my scene. And let's go ahead and set up the HumanIK skeleton here. So I'm gonna click on this tab here. If you don't see this here, you will find this button right there. And I'm just gonna go ahead and click on Create a Skeleton. As soon as I do, you can see that this was created, and now there's a skeleton in the scene, right? I can click on this button here to make sure that I could see the skeleton through the mesh. And now this is the part that I wanted to bring up to your attention. When we rig, you could see that the joints are perfectly straight in the T-pose, especially in the HumanIK, and our legs are not. So for example, if we go into this view, let's press F, and I don't need my lights. And I'm going to turn this on. And actually in this view, it would be more helpful if I was in the default material mode, so I could see the character a little better. You can customize each viewport. So in this one, I have the default material activated, right? Which is this button. And then in my main viewport, I have the textures activated. And let's go ahead and do that actually here as well. Press F, F, and I'm gonna set this up as well. I'm gonna turn off the lights in both of these and switch to my basic material and wireframe. Do the same thing here. All right. And also let's go ahead and turn on the this button, which is the X-ray joints button. All right, so now if I go into the front view, I can grab my pelvis here, grab the move tool, and just kind of position this into place. And one thing I'm realizing right away is that in my case, these joints seem a little too small for me, especially for this tutorial. So let's go ahead and go to Display, Animation, Joint Size, and I'm going to set these to 2 just so I could see them a little better. All right, I'm going to leave this here in case I need this again, and let's go ahead and start talking about this. So the middle of the character is going to be his sort of the middle of the pelvis, right, which is right about here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. This is the part where if I wanted to, I can activate my template or my reference. So make sure I don't select this mesh again. Now I'm going to grab this leg and align it something like this. And before I do anything else, what I would like to do is shift the actual mesh of this leg to be a little better in alignment with the joints. Now, one of the very important things for rigging is that you want to avoid, you never want to break the flow of this line. So this is an error. You cannot do that in HumanIK, because if you begin to apply motion capture files, they are specifically designed for this, for the skeleton to be a certain way. And one of the main things is that this line of the joints must be straight. You don't want to break it. So for example, you also do not want to do something like this. While it might look nice on your character when you're setting him up, you might say to yourself, well, this fits better and it looks better. It will not be good if you ever want to plug him into a motion capture file, right? This will be a complete and total disaster. So that's just something that you learn as you do a lot of these. So one of the things that we need to do is, let's go ahead and turn this button on for 1 second, which is going to make sure that we don't select our joints. And I'm going to grab my mesh, grab my verts, and what I'm going to do is just going to grab kind of the bottom foot here. And keep in mind my symmetry is still on. I'm going to go to the tool settings here and go to soft selection and turn my soft selection on. And right now it's set to volume, which is fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pump this fall off up until this line here kind of goes all the way to his crutch, maybe somewhere actually all the way up. And if you wanted to, you can even go higher. You can go 110. And 110 is too much for me, so I'm going to do 105. I really want to be kind of in this area here. And you know what? Even 105 is too much. I'm going to 102. Yeah, so something like this. This is what I was looking for. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to really very carefully just kind of move these into position, essentially just straightening them up, right? So you could see that they're more in alignment with the line here. And another thing that I would like to do is I'm going to reduce the radius back down to just above his boots. I'm going to grab my rotation tool, and I need to straighten out these boots. Right now, the way they were modeled in zBrush is you could see they're kind of, the toes are kind of pointing out. Our joints need to be straight, right? So his toes need to be straight, just like the leg. So what I need to do is just very carefully kind of put these in position just like this. Again, for motion capture, this is important. Or even if you do your own custom animations, you want to make sure that your T-pose is nice and clean. All right, so we've done that. That's great. Let's go into object mode. And the next thing that we're gonna look at are the arms, but instead of moving the arms just like we did with the legs, I think it would be better if we move them after we set up the skeleton, because then we can actually lift the arms up and put him in the T-pose when he's already skinned. Okay, so I'm gonna go back into this mode, into this viewport, and now I'm gonna turn my joints back on, and we could turn off the mesh here if we wanted to, or do it here. It's the same thing, there's no difference. But I'm gonna turn this off, and let's go ahead and see if we can align this a little better. So now think about this as being the pelvis, this circle here. This one is going to be a part of the leg that bends, right? So right here is the bend. So you want to make sure the circle is kind of in the middle. And this circle being in the middle is less important than this circle being in the middle of the knee. So make sure that this one here is sort of in the middle of the knee. So somewhere here. Let's go into our side view and take a look. So what I would like to do is put this somewhere here. I'm going to put it closer to the bend. So instead of having this knee here, I'm going to put it here, because if you bend the knee when he's animating and he's doing this, it's better to have the pinch towards the back of his knee than the front. All right, so keep that in mind. And then do realize that I did move it to the side. So it's okay to move it this way. It's not okay to move it this way. So that's a big difference, because this has to be straight. All right. Now I'm going to put this where his ankle is, right about here. And I'm going to grab this and put it right in the middle of his foot, somewhere around here. Okay. And let's go into the front view here. And now we just need to mirror this setup to the other side. So I'm going to click on this, go into my HumanIK, and then click on this little button here, which is called mirror left to right. So I'm going to click on that, and you can see that the right side was automatically aligned for us, which is great. Now let's continue working up. So I'm going to click on this, move it somewhere in this area, and then move this somewhere here. Because usually, you know, if you bend, right, you want to make sure that your bend is maybe right where your kind of the belly button is. This is kind of the rib cage. There's no bending there. And technically, you know, we could do one here. Just has to make sense, right? So I'm just going to keep moving up. And now I'm kind of happy with this. This is pretty good. We could get rid of one of these joints. I don't think we really need 3 of them, but this is just the default, so I'm fine with that. Now let's go ahead and do the arms. When I'm doing this, I'm really looking at this circle here, and I'm trying to find a place of the arm right in here where he's going to bend it, right? And then this one kind of by default ends up being somewhere around here, but this is kind of the shoulder controller, and this is like the arm here. And now it's the same exact thing. You should be able to rotate it, but you cannot break this line here. So you cannot take something like this and do this, because again, that will not be good for our motion capture. So try to maintain the straight line, at least for these three. The wrist is not maybe as important, but these three need to be kind of in the same line. So this is going to be my armpit, and this is going to be my elbow, and this is my wrist. And for the wrist, I'm okay with maybe shifting it a little bit, just a little bit. All right, let's go ahead into our side view. And before we work on the hand, which is probably going to be I'm giving a warning right now, the most annoying part about this whole process is going to be the hand, especially because he's not in T-pose. It's going to be a little more, a little more difficult to align these, but it's okay. We'll deal with it. And let's go ahead and grab the neck. You could see the joint that I got, which is like the neck and the head one, right? And what I need to do is I want to place this right where the neck is going to bend, which is right about here. If you needed to, you can press this button here to see where the neck is, right? So see, that's the bottom right there. This is the top. So you want to be in the middle here. And then I'm going to grab the center of his head and literally put it in the center of his head. So somewhere, maybe just a little bit higher, somewhere around this area. All right. Now let's do the hand. And to do the hand, I think it's going to be best if we switch to this perspective view. Right? Now, one of the things I'm realizing is that my arm is really, it looks good here, but it really looks like it's in front. So I need to push this back a little bit. And again, I'm maintaining this line as much as I can, but this one up here is okay to bend a little bit. So I'm going to actually move this here. Okay, so you see the difference. Everything is straight here still. And now let's go into our hand. And maybe let's turn off the textures. Turn on our wireframe so we can see. And turn off the lights. All right, so now what I'm going to do is take my time to align the thumb first. Now we do have this button here. It's called Snap to Projected Center. If you click on that, it could help you snap. It doesn't work all the time, but it's supposed to snap to the center of the mesh and help you with the alignment. So maybe let's leave that on and see if that can help us. So usually when I do the fingers, I like to go under the finger and kind of see if I can match the angle. So maybe something like that from underneath. And now I just need to make sure that we have to figure out where we want the folds to be. You want the end of the finger to be here. And if you ever needed to move something without moving, so for example, if I move this, right, it's obviously moving the end. But if you don't want to move the end and you just want to move this one, hold down the D key. And if you hold down the D key, it's going to allow you to move this without moving the end. So I know that there's a bend right there, and my soft selection is on. I'm going to turn that off. And you can see there's a bend here. This is going to be the end, and then there's another. Let's press the D key and move this up. So your thumb really just has one bend. We don't really need 3 of them, so this is really the most important one. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure why they give us 3 joins, which we could adjust if we wanted to, but I think it's fine because I'm going to be bending it right there and like here, so I'm okay with that. All right, so we have 4 more fingers to go, and again, this is my least favorite part of this exercise, but let's just put these in position. So I'm going to take this one and find my knuckles, somewhere around here. And again, what I like to do is go under the arm and then kind of match the bend of the finger. So somewhere, something like this, and put it in position. Okay, so that's done. Now let's go ahead and make sure that we stretch them to be a little longer, obviously. This is going to be the end. Usually the end joins you want to put at the past the finger, so it's literally the end of the chain. And this one, I'm going to hold on the D key and move it up, and just try to find the bends of where the fingers are, right? So this is going to be your knuckle, so it has to be like here, right? And then this one is going to be this bend here. So it just has to make sense. So make sure you place it where the finger is going to be bending. All right, so I'm going to fast forward and take my time aligning these, and I'm sure you could do the same way. We did 3 fingers, we just have, we did 2 fingers, we have 3 more. So let's go ahead and take our time and align these, and I'll fast forward. Okay, so I finished my hand. I think I did a decent job. Let's go ahead and now mirror it to the other side. I'm going to select this shoulder and do a mirror. All right, now if we click in the center, we can maybe take a good look and make sure everything makes sense. I think everything looks really good. All right, so now if we wanted to, we could turn our texture back on, put our lights back on, and get off the default material. I'm going to do a Control S to save my scene. And now we just need to skin the mesh to the joint. We need to bind them, right? So to do that, what you want to do is select your skeleton, hold on the Shift key and select your character. So make sure this button is on or you're off the reference. And now if you hold on the Shift key, you should be able to select this character, so it's green. All right. And the next step would be to bind them, but I just realized something. You don't want to bind something if you have history on your mesh. That will create problems when you attempt to bind your mesh. So make sure that your geometry is clean and there's no history. That's very, very important. So make sure that you select your mesh. And because we moved the leg, we actually have some history. So I'm going to go to Edit, Delete by Type, and History. And you can see that was cleared out. Now, again, if I select my skeleton, hold on the Shift key, select my mesh, then under Rigging, go to Skin, click on Bind Skin Options, then go to Edit, Reset, make sure that I have the same settings as you. And the only thing I'm going to change here is when I use HumanIK, I like to switch it to geodesic voxel. And I am going to say leave everything as is and just do apply and close. All right. Now, if you click outside the skeleton, you will see that the skeleton changed color, indicating that is now linked to the mesh. So let's go ahead and test it. If I click, for example, on the leg and grab my rotation tool, I can see that yes, it's actually is linked. Let's do the same thing with the foot. Make sure the foot is looking good. And that's just something I like to do, just check it out, maybe stretch it a little bit. Everything looks good. And the only other thing that we need to do is adjust our weights if needed, right? So sometimes Maya will do a pretty decent job linking, and many times the quality of your automatic rigging or skinning is going to greatly depend on the quality of your mesh and the position of your joints. So in my case, I took the time and I tried to create a nice positioning for my joints, so maybe I don't have as many fixes. For example, the legs seem pretty great. I actually don't see any major issues. If I grab the head, I'm pretty happy with the head too. Maybe the only thing that seems very unnatural is the back of the head is maybe following too much, this whole position there. So maybe we can adjust that. Let's check the arms. I'm going to grab my arm, and I think this is pretty good as well. And let's see, maybe we can also grab this. So as you can see, I don't really have any major issues. The only one that I would like to address is maybe his back. So one thing that I did mention before is that I would like the character to be in T-pose. So let's see if we can maybe move him in the T-pose, but instead of grabbing the shoulder, you see that it's bending too much. What I would like to do is I'm going to activate my step snap on, which is, you can hold in the J key to activate it, or you can just manually turn it on. And what I'd like to do is I would like to select my shoulder and rotate it maybe about 15 degrees, right here. Then grab my arm and rotate that maybe 30 degrees, and do the same thing on this side. So 15, and then grab this and go 30. So to me, this is looks like a pretty decent T-pose. Now again, what is the reason you want him in T-pose is because of motion capture. If we plug him into an existing motion capture file, all of them are calibrated to T-pose first. So if your arms are down and you try to plug him in, the arms are going to be messed up, right? They're going to be off the position when the character is moving. So I'm going to do that now. And Let's go ahead and actually unlock our definition. I just realized that. I'm going to say yes. And I just realized that the T-pose has to be set with the definitions being unlocked. So that's important. So let's quickly put it back the way we had it. So 15 and 30. And now what you want to do is now you want to lock your definition, right? So I'm going to lock it in place and tell Maya, hey, this is my default pose. So that's what this is. So that's pretty good. Now, if we wanted to test that, we could switch the source from none to a control rig. And as soon as we do, we can see that now we have some controls, automatic controls that we can play with. So for example, now I can bend them and do, if I grab his arm, for example, you can see how all of that works, which is really, really cool. And of course I can click on his head and I can rotate his head. He's looking left, up, down. Very cool. And yeah, so let's go ahead and touch up the, now because we did adjust the size of our joints earlier, now you can see they're kind of really large in the controls. So let's go ahead and maybe dial this back down to 1. And I think that looks a little better. I'm going to go ahead and close that. If you don't have that open, remember that was under Windows, Animation, Display, Animation, Joint Size. So that's where that was. Okay, so I'm going to do Control S. I'm happy with the way this is headed. Next, I'm going to click on my mesh. And let's go ahead and get out of the control mode, go back into the joint mode. And what I'd like to do is go under rigging. I'm going to go to skin, paint skin weights, and click on options. Okay. Now I am only interested in adjusting the neck only. I'm kind of happy with everything else. So let's go ahead and right click on this joint and do select influence. If you right click and you don't see it, just move it around a little bit. If you're having hard time selecting it that way, the way I did it, you can just simply choose it from the list on the left. It's called neck, right? So you could do that way as well. Just simply click on it. And once you click on it, you can see that the white part is all of the verts that are being affected. So I actually don't want my neck coming down all the way down to his back like that. So I need to kind of remove it. So to remove it, if you want to change your brush size, hold B and you can drag it to change the size of your brush. And what I'd like to do is just simply, what I meant to say is replace. What I need to do is go to replace and change my, I'm going to leave the opacity at 100% and change the value to 0. And now I should be able to erase this. So just figure out how far you want your weights to be. Once you're done, you can hold on the Shift key to make to smooth it, kind of create a gradient, so you can erase it, as you can see, and then you can smooth it, right? So it's nice and soft. That's one way. So holding down the Shift key will smooth it, or you can actually select smooth and smooth it as a brush. So you have a couple different options. So again, replace will erase it. And it's kind of harsh because we have it set to 100%. And I'm fine with that. But then make sure you kind of smooth this out so it looks like there's a fall off, right? Okay, so once you've done that, let's go ahead and test it and see what that actually looks like. So I'm gonna click out and then click on his head here and attempt to rotate it. And you can see how that's being affected. So maybe it's still let's say I'm still not happy, so I'm going to go back into my painting and check it out. If I wanted to, I can remove this even more. Okay, maybe let's check it again. I think that's a little better. Alright, so you can of course play around and adjust the weights as you like it. You can also adjust it maybe in other parts of the body. For example, if you wanted to go back into weight mode, you can select the joint. Let's say I have to select influence, and you can see how far it's being influenced, right? So you can maybe you don't want it to be this low. You can actually grab our replace and erase some of this. Maybe it's going a little too low. All right, then you can smooth this out. Then you can do the same thing on the other side. You can also go to skin weights, and you can do mirror skin weights. If you did one side, you can flip them over to the other. So let's see how that works. So for example, we just did this side, and we can see that this is kind of high, right? So if I right click on this one and say select influence, I can see that this one is a little lower. But if I flip it over, if I mirror it, you can see how that changed to the way this one is, right? So that was automatically done for us. So now they're exactly the same. So that's there as well. So you can go through the model and adjust the weights as you need them. Once you're done, let's go ahead and switch back to the control mode, and we can test this one more time and see how it's looking. You can select these rings and controllers, or you can select these circles. It's the same thing. I think that looks good. You can hold on the control key and select both controllers, and as long as you're in object mode, you should be able to move them together. And maybe let's go ahead and get out of the snap mode so you can see how that works. All right, so that pretty much concludes the rigging. The next part is animation. So in the next video, we can let's take a look and see if we can create a custom animation. But before we end this, let's go ahead and just plug in, just for fun, a a motion capture file that's already isn't here in Maya. So I strongly urge you to save your work, Control S. And if you're moving things around and they get out of control, maybe they get too crazy, you're not really sure, and you want to get back to the T-pose, just simply press this button here. That will put you back in the T-pose after you messed around. So that's there. And now let's go ahead and plug him into a motion capture file and see how our work actually looks. So I actually have Content Browser tab right here. If you don't, I believe that's under General Editors, or where's that? Under Windows. Animation Editor has the motion library, which is really cool because this is the Rococo motion library, which is built into Maya. And they do have some, if you click on price, you can see that some of them are free, and they have some really cool motion capture files that will work with any HumanIK. So that's there. But for this exercise, let's just simply go to the content browser, which is where content browser is under Windows, right? So let's go ahead and open that, and let's go into animation, motion capture, FBX. And before you do anything here, make sure again, save your work, because you might not want to revert back to this once you test it. Just for fun, let's grab something like this flip one. I'm just going to simply double click. And once you double click on it, you can see Maya is loading it in. On the bottom left, it's initializing. Okay, it's going to take a second. Once it's done importing, we can you can see that the timeline was automatically adjusted. And now if we go into the outliner, we can see that flip has been added, which is right there. And this is what it looks like in the scene. So for us to have our character mimic or copy the flip rig, all we need to do is just go into HumanIK drop down, and instead of the control rig, let's go ahead and select flip 1. All right. Now, if we wanted to hide all of these joins, go to show, and let's go ahead and hide the joins so we can maybe have a better look. I'm going to close my content browser. And now all we need to do is just simply press play. Let's watch our animation. And there he is. So that's pretty good. The only thing that I'm seeing that I would go back and clean up is maybe the fingers. So that usually takes a little custom cleanup. But overall, I think he looks really cool. So that's how fun it is to take your character and hook them up into HumanIK. So have fun, play around with these animations and test them and see how your rig performs. And then based on that, you can always switch back to the control rig and adjust your weights. You know, you can go to none, adjust your weights if you see any more issues. Once you're done, you can of course plug them into another animation and see how that looks. And once you're happy, then he's going to be ready to perform pretty much with any motion capture file, right? So this is the fun part. It's kind of the enjoying the fruits of your labor, seeing the character move around and perform is a lot of fun. So I hope you learned something new, and let's go ahead and finish this exercise with the walk animation. All right, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.